Hey guys, Beth Basham here. Thanks for joining me either live or maybe you're watching the recording. I'm really glad you came in and want to learn a little bit more. I posted a poll earlier this week on to ask you guys what it was that kind of prevented you from being mindful at meals. And some of you said that you didn't even, you wanted me to teach you about mindfulness, and I will get to that through many of my posts, but I wanted to, tackle and talk about the top two and actually a third reason that a lot of us are finding that we're not able to be mindful at mealtime. So the top answer in the poll was, and I took some notes, so if you see me looking down, that's why, but the top one was because you're too distracted with your thoughts at meals. So you got that monkey brain, I assume, things are popping in and out. You've got a lot of thoughts going on in your head. Hi, Lindsay. So that was one of the number one reasons you said mindfulness was hard at meal times. You're distracted. And then the other top answer was because you're feeling too rushed. So you've got too much going on. I can completely relate to this personally. I am a mom. I have a 3-year-old. We're getting ready to move to a new state. We've got all kinds of stuff going on every single day. So feeling rushed is something that I can absolutely 1000% relate to, and I know so many of my clients do as well. So I'm going to tackle that as well. And then I got a couple comments from you that there are issues around mindfulness because of the fact that you have kids, right? And especially young children, they can be very needy in many ways. They need to be needy. They're growing, they're learning, they're developing, and having them with you at meal times can be a huge distraction, right? I know for me, I'm getting up every other second to get my daughter some milk or get her something, she forgot her fork or whatever it is, or maybe we have a tantrum in the middle of meals. It happens, right? So I want to talk about how we can be more mindful at meal times, looking at these top 3 reasons that you guys told me that you're not feeling like it's possible to be mindful or it's harder to be mindful. So let's start with the first one. The one that you guys, most of you voted on, was the fact that you're too distracted with your thoughts. So this has to be peeled a little bit, and I don't know if I'll be able to jump into this super deep. Hi, everyone. I see Betsy, Amber, Jenna. Oh, that's Nana. And I saw someone else too, but it's went away. Oh, Cindy. Hi. Okay, awesome, you guys, if you're still with me. So talking about distractions with our thoughts, it's not uncommon. This is something I work with people a lot on, is those negative thoughts that can come up when we're sitting down for a meal. Now, what you interpreted when you read this question may be different than what I'm going to talk about. So feel free to ask questions, pop them in the chat. I can see them. They're running by for me, so I can see if you do have questions while I'm chatting about this. But this distraction thing is not uncommon. I have so many, especially women, when they sit in front of a meal, there's this entire dialogue that opens up for them when they sit in front of their food. Because of the culture and the society that we live in, there's a lot of good food, bad food dialogue that goes on. There's information looking at our plate that tells us and dictates to us that if we eat this, we're good, morally, ethically, and if we eat that, we're bad, ethically, morally, internally, right? So I don't know if you're like me. About 10 years ago, I would sit in front of a plate with a whole bunch of fried food or something like that, and I would feel like if I ate that food, I was morally bad. So those thoughts were very distracting in my ability to be mindful and actually enjoy my meal. So if that resonates with you, I'd love to hear about that, because this is really, really common, that especially as women, but I think all of humanity in the Western world has been given messages that there's these good foods and these bad foods, and if we eat the good ones, we're a good person, and if we eat the bad ones, we're a bad person, right? So those can be really distracting thoughts when we're trying to tap into our inner nutritionist, get more in tune and clear on what our body needs, because we have these distracting thoughts telling us something else, telling us a story, sharing a belief that may or may not be true. And that actually so interestingly affects the way that our body digests the food. Those thoughts, those emotions, they trigger different hormones, different release of neurotransmitters that can actually alter and change the way that we digest food. So you've heard of self-fulfilling prophecy. This can kind of tie into that, right? So we can have a self-fulfilling prophecy that something's bad for us. It can actually translate into the truth for our body. So that's something to chew on a little bit, pun intended, for yourself, but that can be a source of distracted thinking. Now, one thing that we often do when we're distracted with our thoughts is we let them become us, right? So we let thoughts become who we are. And I'm 100% guilty of this. This is a journey for all of us, and I'm right here with you. But what I find when I start to get really overwhelmed with my thoughts, whether it be about a meal or not, is that I start to become attached to my thoughts. So I start to say things like, I am sad, I am depressed, I am angry, I am this, I am that, right? So there's this I am statement. I am declaring myself to be that emotion. It is though I've allowed that emotion to be the expression of who I am. So if we can see that, and the first step of any mindfulness practice is awareness, right? It's awareness. And if we can see those thoughts, those distracting thoughts come in and they're like, I am sad, I am depressed, I am angry, I am uncomfortable with this meal, I am afraid I'm gonna get fat if I eat this, I am afraid of the brownie, I am not on my diet right now, I am, you can figure out what the thoughts are for you, but what tends to happen is we become those thoughts, right? And they become overwhelming. They're overwhelming, and mindfulness is impossible, right? When we've become, we've been taken over by emotions. So one simple strategy that I've used for myself and with my clients is simply inserting the word feel between the word am and whatever it is that we're feeling. So let me illustrate this. So instead of saying I am sad, we say I am feeling sad, right? That in that moment, and this is a huge part of being a mindful whatever, is the opportunity for us to get in the space of the witness rather than to be consumed by the expression of the emotion itself. So instead of saying I am sad, I would see that for what it is, see myself being distracted or consumed by the thought, and then saying I am feeling sad. And in this moment, we're able to distance ourselves from that emotion, recognizing that we can be separate from our emotions, right? We are not our thoughts. We are not the things that we feel to the core, if that makes sense. And we do have the power and the ability to move through that and see it for what it is, okay? And change it, pivot and change it, right? So I am feeling fearful of eating this food. Let's just say you're at a party, they're serving chocolate cake, and normally you don't eat chocolate cake because chocolate cake, we have these beliefs about what it will do for us. And you can see that, you can observe that, you have distraction. So instead of enjoying the chocolate cake, right? Instead of taking your fork, digging in and enjoying it with your friends, the people that you're with, we're thinking to ourselves, oh, I'm terrified of eating this cake. Okay, and then we can use that exercise of awareness to see the thought and start to insert that feeling word. So I am feeling terrified. I am feeling terrified right now. We've separated ourselves from the emotion, and then we can start to take some decisive action with that so that we can move forward accordingly and start to shift and change our beliefs in a way that is serving us and serving our true self, right? And sometimes I call that our inner nutritionist. So in those moments where you're feeling distracted by your thoughts, and maybe it has nothing to do with food, right? Maybe you just had a really crappy day and you sit down to your meal plan and you sit down to your meal, sorry. Oh, bye Cindy, it's nice to see you. I'm glad you came on. Tell Kyle I said hi. But you're sitting down to a meal, right? And you're feeling just overwhelmed with the day, right? Your kids have been crazy, your work, your boss was complete jerk to you, you've got a new project on your mind, something like that. Those thoughts can be distracting too. They have nothing to do with food, but we can still implement that same exercise of feeling that emotion, witnessing it, and starting to separate ourselves with it from the I am statement, I am sad, to I am feeling sad, or I am feeling emotional, or whatever, right? So just something to kind of consider as we're stepping into this mindfulness practice, especially when it comes to food, is that we can start to be witness before we sit down. And another thing that will help us with this is to make a practice of doing like 5 deep breaths before we eat, right? So just 5 simple deep breaths, in through the nose, out through the mouth. I know that it can be challenging when you have other people around, especially if you have small children. I'm going to talk about that in a second, but having some sort of practice of the breath, just so you can get in touch with how you're feeling, because sometimes we don't even know, right? Sometimes we just feel anxious, and it's not a thought, but it's actually like a pitter patter of the heart or a queasiness of the stomach. It's not necessarily a thought going through our head, but through a breathing practice, just 4 to 5 deep breaths before we eat, we allow ourselves to really recognize where we're at, and then we are more empowered to take the steps forward to change that. Okay. So I hope that's helpful for some of you who said that you're feeling distracted by your thoughts, and that's preventing you from being mindful. So the other thing that I want to talk about is being too rushed. And this is something that I said before, I can totally relate to, right? We live in a rushed society, and I'm going to say this, and I'm going to say this so kindly because I've had to get uncomfortable with this as well for myself. Sometimes looking at these behaviors gets uncomfortable, okay? There's no if, and, or but around it. And how we do life, the speed at which we do life is highly reflective of the speed at which we do food, okay? I've seen it over and over in my practice. I've seen it over and over in myself. And it's not always comfortable to look at, but when I am eating at a fast speed, and I'm eating fast, I'm eating standing, I'm eating in the car, when I'm able to see that behavior for what it is, hi Anna, hi Emily, it's really powerful to accept that the speed at which we do food is often reflective of the speed of what we do, how we do life. And it's not always easy to change that, but I just want to bring that up because it's an interesting thing for us to look at is the speed at which we do life and why. Right? One blessing that's come out of this COVID pandemic is that I can't talk, is that a lot of people have been forced to slow down, right? We've been forced to slow down. We can't go to work the normal way. We can't go to school the normal way. A lot of people are working from home. That's bringing up a whole bunch of stuff. And there's a lot of uncomfortable things that can come to the surface when we slow down. So if you're feeling like you're too rushed around meal times, you're choking down food, I want you to take a look at what's going on in your life. Why is that? What do you need to let go of? And is it important enough for you to be mindful at meal times, to be mindful with every aspect of your life? Is that meaningful enough for you to take a deeper look into what's going on in the other corners of your life, so that you can make space to slow down, right? This is not an easy practice. This is so hard, like so freaking hard, so hard. I am somebody type A. I like to go. I like to push. I like to just force things. And oftentimes that forcing and that pushing speed up the rate at my life. And I end up eating quick at my desk while I'm typing emails to people. I feel like everything has to get done right here, right now. And if I'm really honest with myself and I really look at that, I'm like, whoa, like that's not really how I want to do life. And that's reflected in how I'm eating right now, right? And I'm not perfect. I still go through these phases, right? I still go through these moments where I am too rushed. And those phases sometimes are normal. You know, we're getting ready for a move to Colorado. I know there are going to be days where I'm going to eat standing because we have movers in the house or whatever, right? Like that's not what I'm not talking about those like every now and then moments. This is the day-to-day moments. Are you always feeling rushed at meals? Is that always an excuse for not being mindful at meal times because you're rushed? It's important to examine that, look at that, and be honest with yourself to see if that's what you want, right? And that's not always an easy thing, and it's not always comfortable. And it's just important to ask, like, what are the expectations we have for ourselves in our life, for ourselves and for others? So many times women put themselves last. We put the needs of our family well above the needs of ourselves, right? Hey, Lisa. I love that there's just fun people just popping in and out. So it's super cool. So it's just, oh gosh, it's just an important, and again, it can be uncomfortable to ask yourself, like, well, what's this about? What's this rushedness about in my meals? Are we distracting ourselves by eating in a rushed sense? Are we forgetting to listen to our body's signals? Because that is where I see a lot of my clients struggling, is that they've been trained even from a young age that it's important to eat fast, to clean your plate, to get from here to there, right? So if we can, again, bring awareness to the plate, and notice and observe and make some decisions from there. It can be really helpful. Again, it's not that we have to be perfect. This isn't a practice of perfection. This is a practice. Right? So, and then I did want to address, because I got some comments, but the last thing that you guys had mentioned is one of the challenges in becoming mindful, right, is the fact that you have kids. And if you have young kids like myself, meal times are really tough to practice all of the mindfulness, right? Like when I'm working with my clients in my inner circle, we talk a lot about different strategies for being mindful at meals, like what to do, how to look at the meal, how to smell, taste, touch, everything. And we have exercises that we do to support that. But if we have a little 3-year-old, 2-year-old, 1-year-old, or older even, asking us for different things, throwing tantrums, throwing food, it can be really hard to get into that mindset to be mindful with your plate, right? Like totally hard. I get it. So I'm not saying perfection again is our goal, but some things that I've found are really helpful for me, and I'm speaking to you as a mom of a 3-year-old and a mindfulness eating coach, an intuitive eating counselor, like all the things. I have really been challenged with this, right? Because it's not always easy. But what I'll tell you that has been working well for me is while I'm doing the preparation of the food, that's when I do more of the mindfulness stuff. Before we sit down, before I know things are just going to hit, before SHIT could potentially hit the fan, and while my daughter is distracted, playing with her dad or playing with the dog or watching a cartoon or whatever it is I need to do to get the dinner on the table, and never feel guilty about how that needs to happen, right? To get a healthy meal on the table, if it requires a 20-minute cartoon, dude, I'm totally game. I want my daughter to eat a well-rounded meal, right? Whenever possible. But yeah, it's about like being mindful during the cooking process, right? Taking the deep breaths, smelling the food, being, in concert with the food while you're preparing it can be so incredibly beautiful while you are preparing the food for the family, right? So even if you have a little one who's distracting you, running in and out of the kitchen, there are still moments, even if they're brief, where you can take a deep breath, where you can center yourself, where you can witness your feelings and respond, right, appropriately. And it can take literally 10 seconds or less. It does not have to be, some people think mindfulness is this like, oh, I have to meditate even 10, 15 minutes a day. And it's not necessarily a requirement, right? It helps if you're able to do like 10 to 15 minutes of meditation daily, totally can shift things and change things, but it's not required. So taking those deep breaths. Another thing I've been experimenting with that's been awesome is actually doing mindfulness stuff with my daughter. So instead of just assuming that she's too young and doesn't know how, I actually just have made a game of it, and it's been really fun. I actually recorded her doing a little mindfulness exercise. It's been months now. I should try to find it and post it in this group. But I asked her to do it with me, right? So I'm like, hey Maya, do you want to do this fun game with me? And of course she's all excited about a game. And I'm like, okay, let's pick up our green bean and let's look at it and tell me what colors you see. What shape is it? And this is good for her learning, right? She's 3, so she's learning colors and shapes. And if you have an older kid, you might use different cues. If you have a younger one, you might just still talk to them and show them again as a part of their learning process. But smell it, taste it, touch it. Can you smell it? What does it smell like? Okay, what does it look like? What does it feel like? You can go through the mindfulness process with your kids. Even if they're younger, it's still fun to play that game with them because, and though their attention span might be really short, which my daughter's was, I did this with chocolate. I did it with chocolate with her. It was really funny. And I was like, can you just take a small bite? And she took one small bite and then she looked at it and then she just threw the whole thing in. It was really cute. But it's a way to kind of make the mindfulness practice not only serve yourself, but it can also serve your family, right? Like, what a blessing to give your child to learn how to be a mindful eater from the very beginning. How cool is that? The fact that we have these tools available to us now. I'm sure mindful eating was a thing when I was a 3-year-old myself, and my mom did an amazing job of raising me as a good and healthy eater. But at the same time, I was part of the Clean Plate Club. I know I was forced to eat bites of food. I've heard people say, oh, the starving kids in China, you get this food and you won't eat it. Just like little I don't know, like inserting these little bits and pieces about what kind of eater I should be, rather than letting me allow my intuitive guidance and my hunger cues to lead my eating choices, right? That just wasn't available when I was young. So I think it's an important and a beautiful gift that we can share with our children, right? Like we can give our children the gift of learning to become, actually not learning to become, but retaining what they're born with, retaining that mindful and intuitive eating awareness that they're born with, right? They are born with it. All of you, watching or not watching, were born as an intuitive eater. I have no doubt. You were born into this world knowing how to self-regulate your appetite by witnessing and taking cues from your body to learn not only what to eat, but how much. And a lot of that was destroyed through your childhood, right? Unfortunately, so many of us were conditioned by commercials, by what our parents did, what our friends did, and that changed and shifted our relationship with food. And that's what I want to get back to, is that childlike connection with food and body, right? So it's giving our children that beautiful blessing of learning how to maintain their intuitive eating capacities, but also to love their body. You know, if you think back on, when did you start looking at your body as more than just this vesicle to get you around and enjoy the world? Like what point in your life, and this sometimes will take some reflection and meditation, perhaps some prayer, but like when in your life did you stop looking at your body as this beautiful, joyful vessel for you to interact with your body on, but also when was it, when did it become more than that, right? And I can remember for myself, when my body was no longer my body. I was around 7, 8 years old. I remember thinking to myself, oh, my body is something that I have to keep in a certain form or shape in order to be loved and accepted, right? So it's just an interesting thing. It's different for everyone, but I have met so many people who said they started dieting when they were like 7, 8, 9, 10 years old. And it's a tragedy because it's not who we are. It's not our true essence. We shouldn't. I wish that on no child that they're put on a diet or have learned to lose the respect for themselves at such a young age. It like breaks my heart. So we can do better, right? When we know better. And I think it's just a beautiful gift that we can give our children to teach them these mindfulness exercises from a young age. But that's just my opinion. You can agree or disagree. It's totally cool. Anyway, that's all I got for you. This was kind of a long Facebook Live, but I enjoyed it. I hope that some of this was helpful. I think that becoming a mindful eater, an intuitive eater, there's a lot of similarities between those two terms, a few differences, which I'll get into one day. But I hope that it was helpful as you're learning this process, or, you know, just staying on this journey, because it's a lifelong one. So anyway, happy Thursday. I hope everyone has a great 4th of July. That's when I'm recording this. So I hope you guys all have a safe 4th of July. Stay safe with everything you're doing. And I'll probably pop on in a live next week. So, all right, take care.